My name is Manuel. We'll be going over SNMP monitoring today, this morning. I'm asked a lot, how do we pronounce your last name? It's very easy. You don't. You just call me Manuel. First thing I need to know is how many repeat offenders do I have in the room? How many people were here last year? Okay. We'll talk later. I'll go over some of the basics again then, since most of the people are here for the first time, but I will cover some of the stuff I've done in the last 12 months. I need quickly a show of hand to know which group you belong to. Who doesn't know what SNMP is at all? Nobody? Good. Who knows what it is but never used it, never implemented it? Okay, that's about half the room. Okay. And well, you know, it is supported on the Mac, but it's not really exploited well, so we'll cover that as well. So SNMP stands for Simple Network Management Protocol. And basically what it does is it's a protocol that most devices support, and they'll give you performance or health statistics on their status. People don't know how many devices have it. Most little cheap D-Link routers you buy support SNMP. Projectors, most of them support SNMP. Printers have SNMP, and they can return a lot of data on that. I mentioned SNMP monitoring, but there's monitoring, and then there's SNMP monitoring. Because most tools, Nagios, or I use Xenos, they can monitor other protocols as well, shell commands. So if you can talk to a box and you can extract the metrics you need, you can monitor it. SNMP is just easy. If a box does SNMP, your task is much easier because you already are getting a lot of data. What it does, let's go back. The way it works is that when you do a query for a device, it will give you a tree. So it's basically like a genealogy tree where you have different branches, and each branch will have possibly much more branches or just an endpoint data, considered a leaf. So for example, my laptop, I'm going to show you the extensions I've done. I've got a branch that is my physical disks, and then I got another branch which is my volumes, and I got another branch which is my battery info. So that's the way SNMP works. It all works by branches, and you tell it which junction you want to navigate if you're doing a walk, or you can specify just an endpoint, a leaf that you want. I'll give you that metric. So I'm going to go over each part one by one. You can get performance data, health status, and notification of events. There's a lot of IT gear out there that has it, and sadly it's not used a lot outside of the data center. This crowd here is a bit more tech savvy. There are more people at PSU MacAdmin that use it for their device, but it's rarely gone out of the data center. The Nagios presentation that was yesterday, was excellent by the way, showed infrastructure. The guy was monitoring infrastructure, which is your data center. But a lot of people don't monitor the endpoints. And whether you're education or corporate, 20 years ago in education they used a blackboard and chalk. It was very rare that you had a critical chalk failure that interrupted your workflow, very rare. Or if you're using this in the corporate space 20 years ago, very rare you had a critical marker failure as well. But today, everything's digital. In this room, I'm giving a presentation. If the projector fails, my presentation, I've got a lot of problem. All of us hunkering around my laptop is not a good solution. So there's a sound processor that processes my audio. There are many, many components, and if you're not keeping track of all of them, you're going to have workflow issues as soon as you have a failure. And SNMP allows you to detect those failures often when the gear is not in use and allows you to remedy it. And that's a huge difference. I do this on the corporate side, and when you tell a client there's been a failure, but it's fixed and he's good to go, instead of him calling you going, I'm trying to work and it's not working, there's a huge shift in perception of the value of the service you give him. So it's not, if you get that out of the data center, almost nobody does that. So, and it's very versatile, especially the SNMP agent on the Mac. The data is made available from the device. You query it, and it uses what is called a community name. There's two community names in the SNMP world. There's a read-only, and then there's a write community where you can actually push settings. And there are some places that use SNMP to push settings to a vast array of devices. The community name is just a string. By default, it's public and private for the read-only and the write. And they tell you to change that right away for security reasons. The data format, as I went, is of a tree, and I'll show that from the terminal. I'll give you an example right now of what it looks like. If I walk my laptop, and that's a table for my disks, it shows you the data inside of that tree. So I did the SNMP walk command, which gives me a whole branch, and I asked it for the branch that contains my physical disk information. So you can see in my laptop, I've got two disks. I've got two 1.45 terabyte drives. Shows me the model number, the serial number, the speed, the type of partition, and it detects if there's a RAID or not, and it will tell me the status of the smart status. The RAID is going to be in my volumes, and it gives me the RPM as well. And the category, it's a hard drive, so they're physical spinning disks. So that's what the data looks like. Then you have what's called a MIB. Now for my stuff I've done, I haven't written one, but if you have a device, an HP printer, a projector, or a router, the manufacturer will give you a MIB, and all that is a dictionary. Because you saw, I put the ON flag so it would turn the data numerically, but those branches are just numbers. They're like IP addresses. How do you know that .1, .3, is your temperature of your box? You're not going to know that. That's what the MIB does. It's basically a dictionary that will match the numerical to the description of the metric you're getting. Also, what's most important, because most of the time when you're doing monitoring, you've already listed the MIBs you want. So you target them. So I need this MIB because of this temperature. I need this MIB because it's my fan state. In which case, at that point, the dictionary is not very important. You might need the MIB to get those, but once you have your list, you're good. MIBs become crucial when you deal with traps. Certain device can actually send a trap. They won't wait for you to ask them how they're doing. A good example are UPSs. When a UPS loses power, when the power goes out in the building, you want to know right away. You don't want to wait until the next polling cycle. Servers that restart, they'll send a trap. Why? Because if you're polling every 5 minutes, you could actually have a restart and miss it. It could restart in that interval, and you want to know if a server restarted. So a server will send you a trap, and if you've got a good agent, you'll receive that trap, and that's where the MIB is very important because it will translate. If my APC UPS sends me .1, I don't know what it is, but if I've got the MIB installed, it's going to tell me lost power, and I'll know what's happening. Now, I showed you an SNMP walk, and it got the table for my physical disks in my machine. I could do an SNMP get with just one of those data points, and it would get just the endpoint, so the leaf at the end of the tree. That's the difference between a get and a walk. Walks are done very much to explore. You want to know all the data that's available, and once you got it, once you have identified what you need, you'd use the SNMP get to go and query that information. You can gather performance data, so how much RAM do I have free on this machine? If you're querying services, it could be a web service, and you can check what's the response time, what's the page size, especially when you have a static web page that's giving you a form or something. Just checking the page size will tell you if the page was messed with, because as soon as a modification is done and there's an error or somebody screws up, the page size is going to change. You can check on that. You can do threshold alerts, so if my temperature reaches above certain, just tell me, and then you can have event response. You can even automate your monitoring with your ticketing system, which a lot of people do. So if you have a critical event come in, it's going to generate a ticket in your ticketing system and say, you must deal with this, I can't reach this server. Trending is an offshoot of the performance gathering. That's more business intelligence. And you can do it to a certain extent with your SNMP monitoring. Ideally, you'd pipe the output of the SNMP monitoring into a tool like Splunk, a data aggregator that will do even more powerful trending. And actually, I went to a Splunk seminar, and one of the first uses they had for the tool a few years ago was to extend SNMP monitoring by doing log file parsing that SNMP just couldn't handle.
What tool was that?
Splunk, it's a free, it's a log file aggregator, so basically it gathers data from any source, any text file it can get its hands onto. You can redirect syslog to it from different servers, and it just crunches all the data. And then you can do correlations, and that's where the power comes in, is when you start correlating data from different silos that normally wouldn't talk to each other. So, you have a marketing department and you have a technical department, and you start to correlate the impact of a sales, a marketing initiative you did and how it impacts your support. That's where the power comes in. So why use SNMP? I have a MacBook there, and I did a screenshot of Monkey Report. There are some tools that will give you good statistics on your Macs. Monkey Report is, I haven't used it, but the feedback I get is decent for that, which is great, but it only does your Macs. Then you've got network infrastructure. Might be Cisco, might be HP. Cisco's got a kick-ass software for that. So does HP. It only does their stuff and nothing else. So now you've got Monkey Report, and you have to go into the Cisco software. Then you have your projector. Of course, Epson's going to have the ultimate to monitor their stuff, which doesn't work with other brands, and your printers, and your servers. SNMP is the common link. If you want one tool that keeps track of the health of everything from A to Z, or A to Z, sorry, I'm Canadian, SNMP is going to do the job. And if you've got a good tool, like I said, even if the device doesn't speak SNMP, which sadly happens a lot in the AV world, a lot of AV gear is 10 years behind IT, then you can use another protocol. If you can telnet into the box, you can automate a telnet session, get the data you need, and inject it into your agent. So, but SNMP by default will talk to a lot of devices, and it's a good one-stop shop to get a lot of the devices. How the Mac uses SNMP. There's an agent in the Mac. There's an SNMP agent called NetSNMP. It is an open standard, so it will work on Macs. The same agent, NetSNMP service, also exists on Linux. And since it's an open standard, it does not work on Windows, obviously. Why would Microsoft use an open standard? There was a person who did an SNMP installer that worked on Windows, but I don't believe it's been updated since the Reagan administration. So if you want to dive into that, good luck. I'm not going to touch that. So it only works on Mac and Linux machines, so basically real computers. Turning it on, the service is there, and there's a launch D task for it. All you have to do is go and edit the org.netsnmp snmpdp list in the system library launch daemons. And there's a key called disable, which is set to true. You just edit that to false and you save, and then you load the launch the task, and it will activate the service. By default, it has a preference file, which is snmpd.conf and resides in /etc/snmp. It is one huge monolithic text file. When you open it by default, it has a lot of commented out stuff. There's a lot of stuff you don't need or don't use. I myself just erase it and put just what I need. There are different sections in there. It has an entry for the read-only community name, an entry for the read-write community name, system location, system contact, extension scripts to extend the SNMP agent, and I'll cover that more. And it even has process information. You can tell if you've got kiosks. You've got Macs that are running in kiosks, and they're there 24/7 open, and Safari must be on all the time. You can do tell SNMP, process Safari, minimum number of threads, maximum number of threads, and if it exceeds that, send an alert. And you also have volume information. You can tell NetSNMP automatically if a volume is under 10% free space or X amount of bytes, send me an alert. The monolithic file is not very compatible with a lot of the Mac deployment tools that we have. Monkey and all these things, they like to have one setting you can push out. Having one huge file that has a lot of data in it is not Doesn't work with that mindset very well. But since it is a simple text file, we should be able to compose it from modular components. And of course, it'd be nice if we could automate all that process. This is something actually was asked of me last year, because I was going through the SNMP D.com file and explaining the sections and what they did, and somebody raised their hand, can I just push out one thing? And right now you can't. Because it'd be nice, you have deployed SNMP, you've got 3,000 Macs, it's all working, you're happy, now you want to change the community name. But the file was customized from location to location. Syslocation depends on the campus you're in, and now you just want to change just the community. It can be annoying to do that. So what I've done is this is the file structure I've come up with. So I've got the /etc SNMP folder. I've got our snmpd.conf file, and I made a folder called components. Now, I only put in there what I need. The read-only community, I don't push out settings by SNMP. I got syscontact and syslocation, all three of them are text files. And then I have an extensions folder where I will put all my scripts that will extend the SNMP agent, because that's where the power really resides, is you can extend scripts and they will return the data into an SNMP OID branch. An OID is that numerical data I gave you, that address. And basically you can run any shell script of your liking using Bash, Python, whatever language you want. So if you can do it from the command line, you can return the data through SNMP. And the beauty of that is that script will only get called if you request that branch. So you can have 100 scripts in your Mac, in your configuration file. If you don't have an SNMP server that's polling that machine, they just don't get executed. If you've got an SNMP server that's polling every hour, then every hour is going to ask the Mac, hey, I need all this data, and then it will execute the appropriate scripts and return the data. So that's what I did. And it would be nice to automate that, so what I did is I did a launch D task. Who here knows what launch D tasks are? Okay, to those who don't know, you know what a Linux cron job is? Okay, well, Apple pulled a Microsoft and said, cron's been used forever, let's come up with something better. So they come up with launch D, and it is actually really good. And when you do a launch D task, that's what controls all the daemons. You have different parameters you can give it. Run once, run every so often, or you can actually set a watch folder, and that's what I've done. So I've done a launch D task that launches that components folder that I made. And every time it detects that folder has changed, it will recompose my snmpd.conf file. So that's the flowchart. So I start by, it executes when the folder was modified. Then I move the current file to .previous, because I want to keep the last iteration in case there's a mistake and you want to go back to it. Then I set default values for the 3 text files in case they're not there or they're empty. Then I read all 3 of them, and do I have valid values? If I had valid values, then I override the defaults I created. And then I push them out to a brand new file. So the first one has only a greater than symbol because I'm overwriting, and then the subsequent ones just they append to that file. So I'm slowly rebuilding my .snmp file. Now, the second part of my parser lists all the scripts that I have in my extension folder. And for each script, and again, this is something that I've set. You don't have to follow this. You can make your own logic. But you can specify when you extend the SNMP agent, that result, give it to me on a specific branch. You don't have to use that, in which case it will use a default branch, enterprise something, and it will return the same table, the same data. But if you start to do a lot of SNMP extensions, you could overlap with what the other guy did when building down. So if you want to be sure, you want to control where that data is pushed. So I actually put the OID branch in my text file, and I extract that. Your scripts also have, inside the file, have a name. I usually put a single letter. The reason is, the table you're going to get back all the letters of that name will get converted to ASCII characters and will get added to the branch. So if you name your script, this is the most amazing script I ever did, your OID branch for that is going to be 3 pages long, and you're going to curse you know, till the end of time. So I just put a letter, and I don't, that name is not referred to anywhere, so it doesn't really matter. So I just put A, B, C, D, and I put them in the list. So it keeps my OIDs shorter. And then I push this line, extend, because I use the extend command right now to extend SNMP. It's not the most efficient. There's another method called pass. There's exec, extend, pass, and pass persist. Exec is deprecated. It's been replaced by extend, which is more powerful. Pass persist is a lot like pass, but the process stays alive. So if you do a pass persist extension, it will stay in the Mac's memory and keep running until SNMP or there's a shutdown command sent to the Mac. So most of us don't want that. Plus it requires a MIB. You must write a MIB. The pass parameter basically hijacks the whole process. So, you know, SNMP walk is broken down. We don't see this when we do this, but it actually does a get command and then does a get next. Get me this data, I got it, okay, move to the next, and then it goes to the subsequent entry in the branch. You basically hijack that process and you must replicate it. But it gives you more control, because right now my disk script has 9 data points. It's 9 scripts. They're each, because I use extend and it was easy and was quick. But that means I'm calling diskutil 9 times. If I figure out how to do a pass script, I will call diskutil 1 time. I'll generate my table, I'll hijack the process, and I'll go get next is this. And it will feed the same table, but in a more efficient way. That's on my to-do list. So I push extend the OID, the name, and the script path back into my file again. So I'm recomposing my file. And then I go, is this the last one, or is there another script in my list? Yes, okay, keep going until it's finished. And then at the very end, it restarts the net SNMP daemon. So, give a quick example of this. So if you look at the command that I did on top, I'm using the public. So you go SNMP walk, that's the version. C is community name, so the public community name. Timeout, I'm increasing the timeout because some of my commands take a while, not for this script, but for some other scripts where I look up Google location stuff. If I don't increase the timeout, the script's going to fail on me because it's not going to get return data. ON is what gives me numerical output. My target, which is my laptop, and the branch. So by this definition, let's say I want to change the community name. So PSU So if I replace public by PSU in my RO community text file, it's going to detect that that's been changed and it's going to rebuild it. So now if I do my SNMP walk that I did before, it doesn't work. It's going to time out because my community name has changed. So, but if I go here, PSU, I now get my table. So that gives the MacAdmins the ability to just change the community all over the place. And if they customize the system location by campus, it doesn't touch it. It will recompose it that way. And it's the same thing also with some script extensions I have. So I'll give an example. That's a test script. Does the most incredible function ever in programming because it's in every damn language you see. So it's a bash. I use bash. This is my OID. And again, this is the part where it's my parser that I wrote. I control it. You don't have to do it this way. But for me, basically, it says for every script in that folder, take the second line, remove the comment, and that's your OID. So I use this branch. 136141 is standard. You're going to have all the data there. This number here, 43776, That's my IANA PEN number. I'll get back to that later. It assures me that nobody uses that. It's my company number. So if I go somewhere else and they're using that number, they probably copied off one of my scripts and they didn't bother changing it. But that guarantees me I won't overlap with anybody, because nobody should be using that because it's my number. So if you start to do heavy development, you should get your own IANA PEN number, and we'll quickly go over that. And this is the name, and I call it A. Since I'm Canadian, I should have put EH, but it doesn't matter. Again, that's just to keep it short, because if I put something really long there, and we can do it, we'll actually test it. And it echoes a single value, hello world. So right now that's in my main folder, and I'm going to move it to the components folder, the extensions folder. Sorry. So if I do a walk now, but I don't want that branch because I gave it the 99 branch, I get hello world. Now, since I'm doing the whole branch, I get everything that SNMP returns, and there's a lot of data there, and some of it is relevant. The 97 you see over there, that's my A. That's what I'm telling you. If you put a really long name there, instead of giving you .1.97.1, it's going to .97. And it's going to list every character ASCII value of the name. So that's why I keep my names really short, because I don't want to have to enter really, really, really long files. Now, I put this in place, and I was still doing a lot of developments of my script, and it really speeds up development because I can edit that. Right now, I'm in a good mood, things are going well. And then I get the feedback from the session. Oops. And the change was applied right away. Now, that script wasn't, it would have worked even if I didn't have my daemon that rebuilds the file, because I modified the script and that script gets executed. It was already in the snmpd.com file properly, but my file was still rebuilt and it still works. So it recreated it properly. And I'm going to show you what happens if you change this. Look at my OID now. String, the best script ever, and it errors out because I have spaces. But the OID, if I remove the spaces, the OID is going to be one entry. So at 99, I have 99.4.116. It would go for as many characters as I have in the name if I remove all the. Now I'm going to move that back out. No such object. So now when I try to query that branch, there's no longer a script associated. Yeah, go ahead. And please interrupt me for questions during as we go.
So if the 99 is the value you specified for your branch, and the last bit is the ASCII values of the nice name or whatever.
Yeah.
What are the...
What's in between?
What's in between?
Okay, what's in between is generated by NetSNMP. You have no control over that. There's a lot of data. You can look up the documentation for what it is. One of them is going to be the command of outputs, the number of outputs count. The value that we care about is the exit value. And I'll cover that a bit later because you can use that. You can specify that. So when you normally exit a script and it was successful, it's going to have an exit value of 0. You might have instances where you want a different exit value just to know that things did not go well. So I'm going to cover the different things you can do with a script. There's different values you can control. And, does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, like the part in between the two, you don't control that. And most of the time you ignore it. Like the .1, .3, .6, everything starts by .1, .3, .6. I have yet to see an OID that doesn't, because they're standard. They're like the start of the tree, and you go with that. There is 1.4.1 is where all the company-specific stuff will be. There's also a 1.2.1 where you get like syscontact, syslocation. But most of the time, you're going to have those branches. Okay, so any questions on the launchd task and the topology of the script? It's a very straightforward script. Most of you have written something similar. Some of you might have written launchd tasks already. It's just a parser, and it composes a text file. So there's nothing revolutionary about it. It's quite simple. It's just that I'm lazy. I said, hey, it'd be really nice if this happened. Note that I only do read-only community, syslocation, syscontact, and extensions. Nothing is preventing you from doing all the rest. You just need to extend your parser and have more text files. If you need SNMP version 3, which encrypts all the data that is going over SNMP, which I haven't had to do yet because, quite frankly, nobody seems to care if people see the model number of their hard drive. So I haven't needed to encrypt that, but there are places that might. You might want a section where it's going to have that info. It's more than one line, though it's more complex, so your parser is going to have more data, but you can do it. Also, like I said, if you have Macs that are running in kiosk mode and you need the process section of SNMPD specified, you can do another folder. I've got a folder called extensions. You can do another folder called processes, and anything that's in there, it'll list it, and it will add it, it will append it to your snmpd.conf file. So all you have to do is write your parser accordingly. And like I said, you needed to establish conventions. In my case, I do a comment, and the second line, remove the comment, and that's your OID. Third line, remove the comment, and that's your name. You can come up with conventions of your own. The slides are going to be available. I'm going to push them up tomorrow to the SharePoint. I haven't put them yet. I'm sorry. Shoot me. But I didn't put up my slides yet. I finished them last night. I'm going to put them up so you can have this. You can also contact me if I did not, as long as you don't send me emails about some miracle weight loss pill, I will return your emails. And feel free to email me. If I did not want to be bugged about this, I wouldn't be up here today. So, okay, now we can do extensions. You saw the extension scripts I did. You need to make sure that any data you return does not conflict with extensions from other people. If you don't specify an OID branch, it's going to happen. If you start working with somebody, you start exchanging scripts. And also, if you don't specify the OID, you don't control it. It has an order of its own. NetSNMP will manage that. And it will give you difficulty if you try to then inject that into SNMP Agent. In your agent, you're going to go, this is my hard drive table. And then you mess with your extensions, and that table is now your battery. Your SNMP agent's not going to be happy. So by controlling the OID that you return the data on, you avoid that. So the best method is to control the OID. You should have your own IANA PEN number if you start to do this. IANA is a standards organization, and they do assign a specific number. For me, it was 43776. That's my number. If you download a MIB from Cisco, you're going to see, and large companies might have a few. But if you download from a MIB from a smaller company, in the MIB, you will see a number that was going to be their IANA PEN number. And once you have that and you put your data in there, you're sure nobody else is going to trespass. To make sure, the first thing you should do is they tell you is make sure you don't already have one. You might think, hey, Penn State, I'll do this for Penn State, it's going to be awesome. But Bob, who worked at Penn State 10 years ago, did it already. So you must go through their dictionary of all the enterprises that are registered, make sure it doesn't exist. They do this anyway, but you should do it first. If they detect, in my case, I registered that for an employer of mine, and there was a company with a similar name in Germany, so they contacted me and say, hey, are you different? And we had to do some jump through a few hoops to get our PEN number, but we did. And if you don't have, if they're not registered and you want it, then there's an application page that you fill out, and then these people will contact you and will set up your IANA number. They'll ask you to confirm, and then they'll return your IANA number. So I'm going to try to load that. So that's their directory. It takes forever to load because it's huge. There's a lot. I mean, I'm 43776, so, and I got my number a month ago. So they're probably at 44,000 registered companies right now. And go back, and then there's the application form. So if you want to apply for a PEN number, you just fill this out. It takes I had to send it a second time. The first time they didn't respond. And then when you get the data back, they ask you to confirm. There's a few steps to the process, but eventually you get your enterprise number.
Are there any costs associated with that?
The question was, are there any costs associated with it? No, it's free. You might have to justify it, but they're not that difficult because I'm a one-man shop. And I don't have a web page yet. I haven't bothered doing a web page yet. I will, but not right now. And I just send them my credentials. And I didn't have too much trouble with it. Again, I did send a link to this. I said, I'm giving a seminar in SNMP. It'd be nice if I had a PEN number. I don't know if that played into me getting one or not. But I think if you apply for it and you have a decent enterprise, then they're just going to give it to you. It's not going to be too much of a hassle. And it's important because if you want to go legit, like we'll cover this close to the end because I'll have a Q&A section where I ask you some questions. I know it's usually the other way around, but I have a few things I want to know. And if you want to go legit and really package your SNMP well, then you can't do it if you don't have a PEN number because you'll have to write a MIB for your stuff. If you don't have a PEN number and you don't control the OID return, then there's no point in writing a MIB if it's going to change. So. Now, I'm not a very good impressionist, but once, twice, three times a lady is a Kenny Rogers song, I believe. There are a lot of things you can do with a shell script. And that is very important with NetSNMP. Now, I showed you the hard drive table, and I'll go over the different tables that I generate with my extensions. But basically, I return a lot of data, and a lot of it is text. Model number. When I check my RAID status, because I got 2 RAIDs on my laptop, it gives me verified, which is great for having an easy look at your data, but a lot of SNMP agents will only trigger alerts on numerical values. So you can dual task a script, even triple task a script. You can have the echo command, like my little test script, hello world. That's going to be your data. That's what's going to be piped out in the OID branch. But as we saw, NetSNMP returns a fair amount of, it returns a table for every script you make. And one of the values in that table is the exit value. So let's say I look at my RAID status. Great, I'm returning verified. But I can put some logic in my script. I can say, if it's not verified, don't just end the script, exit 1. So now I give exit status 1. So in that table from NetSNMP, my exit status is not going to be a 0, it's going to be a 1. And I can take that branch, I can take that OID specifically, so I won't do a walk, but I'll do an SNMP get on my tool, whatever it is, and I'll check that branch. If it's a 0, we're good. Anything above, send me an alert because my RAID's not happy. So the same script will do these 2 tasks. So the return value and the exit status. And there's a third, arbitrary code execution. It's a shell script. You could be malevolent and do very nasty things. You could format the hard drive. This gets executed as root on most of the devices. If you do have a script, and I didn't put that in there, and then I just thought of that now. If you have a script that needs pseudo privileges, because it executes as SNMP, especially on Linux boxes. I believe it's the same on Macs. What I've done, I had a Dell server running Linux, and I needed to extend the SNMP to get the software RAID status. But the MDADM needed to run with sudo to do that on the Linux version I was using. So what I did is, I don't know if you guys know the sudoers file. There's a file called sudoer which will determine all the users in your system and what they can do. Basically, if you run into that, you can email me and I'll just send you the file. I don't have it in my slides right now. But what I did is I created a user, the user that this gets run on, I added it to the sudoers and I said it can do anything. So basically, when I call anything from a net extension on that machine, it's run as root. So then MDADM just goes through, doesn't give it a problem. Now, the arbitrary code execution gets important for the roaming because there are different topologies. I really liked the Nagios presentation yesterday. The guy was really good and knew his stuff. But again, he was talking about infrastructure. I asked him a question about laptops that leave the LAN, and he wasn't so sure because, again, that's what I was telling you. Monitoring usually doesn't leave the data center. But if there's two worlds, education and corporate. The advent of BYOD, especially in the corporate world, is changing everything. There are no more desktops that somebody works on all day. They have a laptop, they take it home. They put their stuff on it. So you want to know when that hard drive smart status starts telling you, hey, it's going to die, even if the employee's not at home. So what I do then is, let's say I've got my script that checks for smart status. You will return the smart status. That's the echo part. That's what's going to show up in my table. If the smart status is not happy, exit 1. So now I have a trigger to say generate an alert. But it'd be really nice if the laptop is not on the LAN, that I still run that script once in a while. And if I find something wrong, I still get an alert. So that's part 2 of what I've worked on. That is a different script, another launchd task I created. So that script I have set right now that it runs every hour, once per hour. And I have a file that is not in components because my SNMPD conf does not need to be modified if I play with this. So only things I put in components are things that will regenerate the file. So in the root folder of /etc SNMP, I have a email alerts text file. If the file is not there or is empty, script just quits. This machine is not meant to send any email alerts. It's a desktop, it's a machine in a lab, so it's always going to be on the LAN. I don't need that mechanism. Then, if I do have a file, is the server IP valid? Server IP is the IP address of my monitoring server. I'm going to push that into a file too. So do I have an SNMP server? No. Well, if I have an email alerts, it means I don't have a server, but I still want to know when a hard drive is going to go bonkers. So I just move forward. If I do have a server IP, it means I do have a monitoring server, then I ping it. Is the ping successful? Yeah. I don't have to send an email. My monitoring server will figure out that something's wrong. And it will do so much more frequently than once every hour. So I just exit. It's like, I don't need to take care of it. I've got the monitoring server that's looking over my shoulder. If I don't have a monitoring server, or if I have one and I can't ping it, then it means I'm off the LAN. I'm roaming. That's when we execute. So I have an extensions folder where I have a library of scripts. I have certain scripts, because a lot of scripts I don't need to trigger on. The script that returns my hard drive model name, I'm not going to trigger an alert because it's that model name. So there's a lot of data you get that will not trigger any alerts. The ones that do, I specify them as SO underscore and then the name. SO being for standalone. Again, that's my nomenclature. People can do whatever they want. They just have to adapt their parser accordingly. So for each of these scripts, execute them. So I run them like I would run them from an SNMP query, but I manually launch them from this task. And I pass as an argument the email alerts address. That's going to tell them, send that alert to this address. And I run them all in sequence until it's done, once every hour. So out of my library of 30 scripts that extend my SNMP, then maybe I have 4 that have really important alerts. I want to know the battery status. Is my battery bad? Is my smart status bad? Is my RAID degraded? Is my free space down to this? So I have a couple of scripts that I might want special triggers on. If you don't have an SNMP server, it could be your email. It could be directly send an email to Bob. Bob, my hard drive is about to fail. And you control the email, so you can compose and say, you can get the model name, you can get the username, you can fill that out as you want. So you'll get an alert even if the machine is off your LAN.
How does the script parse if it doesn't have a net connection at that point? How do the emails queue up until there is a net connection?
I actually had a debate with that guy over that. My personal experience is because I just use the mail command in the terminal. I don't do anything fancy. And it's been my experience that if you don't have an internet connection, they get queued. Those emails get queued. So as soon as you do join the network, they go off, which is a fine mechanism by me. But Francois was telling me that he's seen some instances where that doesn't work. So, but I haven't experienced it. So it's a mechanism that works for me. But again, this is a workaround because the agent I use, Xenos, doesn't have an agent. If you have an agent on the machine, bypasses that. The Nagios training, Nagios has an agent now, and that is new. And that's probably in reaction to the BYOD movement. You have so many, and that's more, it's less in education, because in education, a lot of our labs and people have their laptops, maybe you didn't image them, you don't control them. But in the corporate space, you image all the laptops that Bob takes home, and you still want to know. So you have 2 ideologies on monitoring. You have Xenos, which was meant for static machines. And then you have the agent model, which is meant more for endpoints. And it was like 2 different worlds, but now they're colliding. So a good tool tries to do everything. And what I'm doing with the email process that I listed there is my attempt to overcome a shortcoming of the agent I use. And there might be some people like Xenos who will watch this video, so I can stare at the camera. If Xenos doesn't have an agent by next year, I probably won't be using Xenos. Because in another life, I use an agent-based system, and there are some certain benefits. An agent system is the perfect answer to tech people's panic at BYOD. Because BYOD, you lose control of the machines. They leave. If you've got an agent on it, you regain that control. You get to execute, you get to check stuff, and I'll go over some of the metrics I get. It gives the IT people back control in a BYOD scenario. So an agent is very important. This is my lame attempt to bypass the lack of an agent with my solution.
How are you doing that BYOD when the people own their own devices?
Well, like I said,
You're talking about devices leaving, which is fine.
Yeah.
But in the BYOD, I'm telling you, these people, bring whatever you want, we'll make it work.
Okay. What you could do, since the net SNMP daemon is not, okay, the question was, because I didn't pass the microphone, the question was, what do you do in a BYOD scenario when you didn't image the machine, correct? Somebody brings in their laptop and they want to join your network. Well, this would actually work. You could make a package installer. So all the net SNMP, changing the daemon, launching it, editing the file, you could do a package that, okay, put this on your machine, we're good. And that would have no server IP file, because it's going to be off the LAN all the time. But it might have an address, an email address. Now, for the email address, there's 2 scenarios. You can send the email directly to a group that has all your tech people. So if Bob's laptop's hard drive's about to fail, you'll know. The other solution, and I didn't include this in my slides or in my script, but I've done it. It's not theory. This works. My tool, and I assume Nagios as well, there's a mechanism to generate from the terminal a command. So what I did is I send the email to the mail server, and on my Xenos server, I have a cron job that runs every 5 minutes on my Linux box, pulls down the email, parses it, parses the body, extracts all the fields that I encoded in the body, and then generates the event with the proper fields in my SNMP agent. So I get an SNMP alert from my agent like I would anything else saying Bob's hard drive's going to fail. So you could do all of this on a machine you did not image just with a package installer. So that's how I would handle a scenario where you did not image the original machine. I'm going to get this done so we can move on to the rest. My email address is very easy to remember, themactech@me.com. You can snap the QR code there to get my vCard, or just the QR code at the back of my shirt, and that's the feedback link for the session. Now, I'm going to do some terminal stuff, and at the end we're going to do a Q&A, and I've got a few questions I want to ask you as well. So I basically have 4 tables that I've worked on. I think I put it back to public. Or do I leave it at PSU? I left that PSU, okay. So the .1 table is my physical disk. I do get some generic Mac info. That's going to be more linear. It's not going to give me tables. Obviously, the first one is my serial number. The second one is my real model name. That annoys me greatly that if you go to system information, or especially on older Macs, you get MacBook 8.1. Nobody uses that. Nobody. You want to order a part, it requires that model name that's listed there. And there's 2 ways to obtain that, and one is off the Apple self-serve website. So you can pull down that page and parse it and get what you want. Or you can, but the problem is that requires the machine to have been registered by a user. So if you've got users that don't register their machines, which sadly happens a lot, nothing shows up. The way I do it instead is I query GSX, but you have to be an authorized Apple Service Center. So there's somebody smarter than me made a library. Yes?
You can also, if you have physical access, you can get it from Apple's Mac. It doesn't use the full law.
Okay, but that is recent. That is recent, and I'd have to check where. The question is, the answer was you can actually get the real model name locally on the machine now. And I know that wasn't the case previously. I see it now when I go about this Mac. It does put the real model name. It didn't used to, and I searched far and wide I scoured the file system looking for that information before, and I didn't find it. So since I need to speak to the GSX or self-solve for other stuff, I would get it that way as well. But if it's local, I wouldn't mind getting that information so I can get that locally. What I do, and it returned it pretty quick, and you see I escaped the script because it takes a while for the GSX lookup. What I do is I get the real model name, and that's something that will never change. Even if I change my logic board, even if I do repairs on the machine, my model name's not going to change. So when I execute that script, I look, do I have a file called model name? No? Okay, talk to GSX and get it. And once I get it, I write it to that file so that the next time it executes, it doesn't query GSX. Because right now I'm doing a walk, but maybe I just want that information, so I'll just run that script. In which case, if I've got a local file for something that will never change, I don't have to tap my internet connection, I don't have to look out. .3 is going to be I think I managed to kill my SNMP agent. Okay. I think I've had a really hard crash. I think it didn't like me escaping it. It won't actually unload now. I probably have to restart my machine. Okay. Okay. That table is going to be my volumes table. So it's different than the physical disks. There are some tools out there that are dumb and see it, that's just a disk as a volume, which is retarded. In my case, I've got 2 volumes on my Mac, Macintosh HD and Data. I have their BSD identifier, then I've got their capacity, free space, the type of RAID, because I've got 2 RAIDs, so I've got a mirror and a stripe. My main partition is a mirror in case a drive fails, I still keep running. And I have a stripe for higher speed and higher capacity where I just put files I don't care so much about. And it gives me the status of my RAID and the type of partition. So that's my volumes table. It gives me everything I need to know about my volumes. And the last one I did is my battery. And that won't return any data on if I run it on a Mac Mini that has no internal battery. So the max charge, current charge, cycle count, you could have alerts on cycle count, because if you reach a certain charge cycle count, your battery is no longer covered by AppleCare. And Apple has rules for that, the number of cycle counts. So you could say, hey Bob, your battery's going to be off warranty in 2 weeks. Do you have a problem with your warranty? A lot of these things about warranty will trigger a post-flight check. And I have the serial number of the battery. So, okay, your Mac's going to be off warranty in 30 days, and you can't renew it because you've already extended it to 3 years. You might want to check that everything's working fine. Maybe a user has things you can't detect through SNMP. Scratch on the screen, 2 keys that don't work on the keyboard that he's been doing with and doesn't bother telling you. If you tell him, hey, your warranty's about to expire, he'll take a good look at his machine, and maybe there's some service issues he wants to take care of before his warranty expires. So those are the tables I did. If you go into the SNMP agent, I use Xenos. I evaluated a bunch of them a couple of years ago, and I looked at Nagios, and I chose Xenos because it had a really slick, nice interface. And when I do corporate Xenos deployments, the client gets this interface. I do a read-only credential that I give to the client, and they see this, they use this, and navigate this. And if I choose a device, like if I go into my laptop, there's actually, sorry for the shitty resolution, this is 1024. There's a links file here, and if the device has a web management page, I put it in there. For the Macs, if you've enabled VNC on it in the preferences and you put a password, you can actually have a URL that's vnc.themac address. So you could have a link there and you basically click and it connects you screen sharing with the Macs. So it could simplify access. But if it's an HP switch, I click here, I'm in the HP login credential window to get into it and manage it. So for the clients, it became a one-stop shop. You didn't have to remember your switch DNS name or IP address. You just went into Xenos, clicked on your switches, selected the ones you wanted to reconfigure, then you log in through that. So it became a great management tools for the clients. So Xenos for that was very powerful. There's also one thing you can do in Xenos, and I really wish I had the time to have it done for today, is you see how it lists my IP services right here. Those are custom components. They're called component modelers. The tables I've been returning by extending my NetSNMP agent, I can create custom tables for that. So here, I have 3 right now listed. I would have physical disks, and I would have file systems, and I would have battery. And all 3 of them would return in this very nice, easy to sort format the data, the tables that I had. But it's not trivial to do, and I tried this week to finish it, and you face palm a lot when you're working on this. So I will get it done, but I couldn't get it done for today. It would have been slick to go like, oh, here's my file system, and then you seeing in a nice interface all the data that I've been returning in my SNMP queries. I did include some data. So if you go to the overview, open firmware password is disabled on my machine. You could enforce that. And again, I get that exit status that I'm not using because I don't enforce it, but you could. So if you've got lawyer office that has MacBooks on the road, they want to enforce that they must have an open firmware password so that they use file vault. You can enforce that. Days of warranty left, that's the GSX lookup. I have 765 days left. I could trigger an alert saying, and that will depend internally. Maybe it takes you 60 days for your organization to hammer out a PO for extended Apple Care, so you might set that threshold differently. And I have here Google Maps. For some reason, it doesn't give me a URL. I have to copy and paste it. Did I lose my internet connection?
Complaining about dropping into, it's not just you.
Oh, it's not just me. Okay. Well, what that basically does is it gives me a URL, and it will take me to Google Maps, and will show where my machine is at that moment. Now you're nodding. I know what you're thinking. Can I generate an alert if two devices are close? If you want to know if your significant other is cheating on you, get a private investigator like everybody else. Bad techie, bad techie. But I can do it. I've done it before. Just saying. The scenario I used this for was for theft prevention. So basically, it would get the geolocation of the machine, and it would get the geolocation of your head office automatically by querying Google's API with your address. And there would be a distance threshold. So if a desktop is more than 10 miles from your head office, send an alert somebody's, taken it home illegally and powered it on. So for that, there's a part that has to be done manually right now. You have to enable location services, and I use two utilities to get that URL. You have to authorize them to use location services. Used to be you could just write a pref file and the Mac would just soak it up, but now some of the pref files are not live. There's a daemon that once in a while will read them up, but if you write that, it doesn't get applied right away, and sometimes it even gets overwritten by the current value in memory. So it has to be done manually right now. But I do believe I saw that some, again, guys smarter than I am, wrote a Perl or a Python library to talk to that daemon. So this could potentially be completely automated. Is location services on? No, turn it on. Are my two utilities present? No, download them. Are they downloaded? Yes. Are they in my list of authorized? No, put them in. Now run my check. You could do all these steps potentially, but I haven't done that. I also have some other data here. My hardware model, my OS model gets registered in the database, so I could do queries and get them. Something that's very useful too that I've done is I do locations. And that saved me, it sounds trivial, but it saved me a lot of time. I had a client where I made a location tree with all of his rooms and all the gear in each room. And one day I come in and two alerts pop up. Two pieces of gear are sick. Completely unrelated gear. Not the kind they go, oh, one's dependent. And normally if I would have just started debugging, it could have taken hours for me to figure out what was wrong. But I had a location tree and only one room was showing red. So right away I picked up the phone and I called them, did you just blow a breaker? And they checked, and it was the case. And they were incredibly impressed, since I don't touch their electrical system at all, that I detected that their breaker blew. And it took me 2 minutes instead of 2 hours of banging my head on the wall going, why can't I talk to these devices? So it sounds trivial, but having a good SNMP agent will save you a lot of time. And that's the conclusion I wanted to give, because you come here, you go to seminars, and you say, oh, that's really cool, I should implement that. Or this would be useful, it would make my life easier. But then you get back to the office and the users start screaming at you for X, Y, Z, and that falls on the bottom of the pile. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to do a launchd task that automates the SNMP conf file, because now that allows you to manage that service with the tools that your system admins are using already. They use Monkey. Great. Now you can push out, manage SNMP all through Monkey, because it's all file-based now. And if you put that in, I gave you an example of the tables I generate. You can generate anything, because unlike a DOS box, the terminal in the Mac OS is the OS. And you more often than not have more features in the terminal than you do in the graphical interface. So you can do anything from the terminal, and you can pass anything to SNMP. You could write a very full library of extensions that get everything you want. And somebody's done it. I mean, they already are a good library of scripts because the monkey uses that already. And it's shell scripts. So you can reuse the shell scripts you already have, just change the format a bit. So it's very little work for you to get this up and running. If you then put all the data into, and I don't care which tool you use, Nagios, Cacti, Xenos, you expose that data very, very quickly. So if Bob calls you and has an issue with his machine, you can go to your console, and just by a press of a button, you get so much data on the machine that normally you would have to explore as a diagnostic steps. Log into his machine, do a disk util, do this, do that. Did he install? One of the things I didn't put in there yet, but I want to do is software updates, pending software updates. Software install history, very powerful command in OS 10. Lists everything that was installed on the machine, third party, and it tells you where it came from. If you've got all this information, maybe, 70% of your service calls, you'll look and you'll know from looking at all the metrics that are exposed right away what's wrong with Bob's machine. And that cuts your time down a lot. And if you get an alert before, I'm telling you, if you implement something like this will happen and you'll be a hero. You will detect a hard drive smart status that it's about to fail, but it's still working. You'll call the user, going, your hard drive's going to fail. Back it up, bring it in, we'll swap it. You're a hero. You didn't lose anything. Now, me, it was more in the corporate space, I was more infrastructure. But I can tell you that when you detect that the air conditioning just blew up at 3 in the morning and you start shutting down gear so they don't explode, the customer is very, very happy for the service then. So it's the same thing in the educational space. You can check I can check if the light bulb's about to burn out on that projector. There's so much that you can keep tabs on, and it allows you to keep the device up and running. Now, we're going to get to the Q&A, and I'll ask my questions first, because they're short. What would you like me to cover next year on that topic that would be of use to you, if anything? Is there something that you would like me to show up, and is SNMP version 3 critical to you? Is writing a MIB critical to you? Because I'm trying to figure out what would be pertinent. I don't want to just show up here just to talk. I would like to give information that will facilitate you coming to the office and implementing something like this. So is there a hit list that comes up in your head? This, I need, this, I need, this, I need, that I could work on for a year and then come back and present?
Is there an easy, beyond the MIB, is there an easy way to find out all of those table names? Like, is there an easy way to read those dictionaries so that I can write a query script like that?
Okay. The question is there an easier way than the MIB to get table dictionaries and table values? The answer is, it depends which device. The Mac, by default, if you just activate the SNMP and you do a query, it doesn't give you a whole lot of useful information. Syslocation, sysname, it's going to have network port information, so when I go to my MacBook there, this IP services, now that's useful and that's out of the box, you get that from the Mac by default. But it's not extended, so any of the juicy stuff you won't get. If you're talking to an HP printer because you want to know the ink levels all the time and you want to get ahead, or you want to get a trap when there's a paper jam so that you don't have to wait for a user to call and go, I can't use the printer, I needed print 17 times because the first one didn't go through. If you want to avoid all that heartache, then you're going to need to identify those OIDs. MIBs are friendlier than they appear. It's a text file, so if you're just parsing it from a text editor, it can be daunting. But there's a bunch of MIB browser utilities available. Those are little standalone apps that you'll launch. You'll pick a MIB file, and it'll give you an easy correlation, and you'll have a search capability. Also, there's an online web reference as well. So when I have a MIB, but that's the other way around, when I have a numerical, I want to know what's this giving me? I just Google it. And by default, usually it lands me on that engine where I type a MIB and it tells me what it is. So, oh, what's this? I got a trap from this value, and it's not a device that's added to my console, so somebody just showed up on the LAN, I'm getting a trap, what the hell? I don't recognize the corporate IANA number, so I don't know what it is. I'll just Google it and it'll tell me, oh, that's HP, so somebody with an HP laptop would enable. You do have SNMP on the Windows side too. It does work, and it does get you back some data, and it depends how much data will on third party. I'll give you a good example. Dell servers. Dell servers have a DRAC interface at the back that you can get. If you don't install anything else, you're not going to get a lot of stuff. If you install OpenManage, OpenManage will return every single metric on the Dell over SNMP. So if OpenManage is working and you do an SNMP query of your Dell server, you're getting everything. And there's some very nice packages. They're called Zenpacks on Xenos. There's a really nice Dell package made by some guy and some Oleg, I think, some Russian guy. He made a really great pack. So if you got a Dell server, it gets everything. But that's great. That's in Windows. But I had some Linux Dell servers. But there are instructions on getting OpenManage working on Linux. So I installed OpenManage on Linux. I got it working. And then for shits and giggles, I put the Dell Zenpack in, and I queried it, and I'm getting all the same data. So whether you're running Windows or Linux on a Dell box, I can monitor from end to end. And it saved us a few times. We had two clients, one where we monitored the Dells and one where they didn't. And it sounds trivial, but a battery on the RAID card failed at both places. In one place, I got a trap, called them up, ordered the battery, went and changed it. The other place, we never found out, because we weren't doing monitoring. They had a power failure. The RAIDs didn't synchronize. They lost their volume. And the manufacturer of the solution, which was using Dell, had to fly over there and rebuild the server because of a battery. That's what you get with good monitoring. So, are there any questions, and is there any topics that people would like to have covered?
Some practical examples of trapping.
Practical examples of trapping. Okay. They're going to be theoretical because I don't have the necessary binaries to simulate them, but you can simulate them from a terminal. A trap, it's not every device that will send a trap. If you have connection to the server, you could, I'm doing an email right now, you could do a trap. So you detect, if you only have a script mechanism, your machine's not getting pulled. You could, okay, Bob's hard drive's going to fail. You could send a trap to the server, but you have to be on the line. So there are some scenarios where that will work. But mostly it's for devices, I gave examples already, an APC, a UPS. So you've got a battery backup. You want to know right away when the building loses power and you switch the battery. So those devices, all of them, all the UPSs, they have a trap configuration section. And basically what you do is you tell them, this is my SNMP server. Send the trap there. There are other protocols, passwords, and stuff that you might have to put depending on the version. And so basically as soon as that battery system loses power and switches to battery, you get an alert right away, which might give you time to log in and do a controlled shutdown of the gear instead of lights out. And there are some cases where a sudden power loss will do serious damage, whereas a controlled shutdown, everything will go smooth. So a UPS is a good example. Printers. A printer will probably be able to set up to send you a trap if there's a paper jam. So maybe because of network latency, you're polling your network not every 2 minutes, 3 minutes, you're doing it every 20 minutes. You don't want to wait 19 minutes to find out that you've got a paper jam for the next polling cycle. You want the device to alert you immediately when it happens. So it will send out a trap telling you I've got a paper jam, and you can react to that very quickly.
About
okay.
security around this SNMP.
Okay, that's going to be the SNMP version. They came out with version 1 a long time ago that's deprecated. Now they have version 2, which has more features but doesn't tackle security much. Security is handled in version 3. Version 3 has a lot more configurations needed, but all the traffic that's going across is encrypted. The tables I was returning right now, I'm using version 2 of the protocol, no encryption. So if you've got Wireshark and you're sniffing my packets, you know which model of hard drive I have, you know how much free space I have. If that is an issue, you need to implement version 3 of SNMP. Now, since you can script anything, you could have sensitive information there. You could send password hashtags over SNMP if you wanted to. You could have a script that picks them up and sends them out. But I haven't done V3. If it becomes, and I haven't been asked much because not a lot of people have security concerns for that kind of traffic. But if it was, I would learn it and I would present it. That was one of the topics I expected maybe to come up.
No, but you are talking about like running shell scripts and potentially arbitrary scripts. It seems like that's a huge potential security vulnerability if you're just roaming around with a laptop that
You
has
could.
it open.
You could, but then again, if somebody gives you root access to manage their machine, you can fuck it up. You can screw it up. There's no ifs and buts about it.
But what prevents like me from doing that to someone else's laptop in
Okay.
here?
Well, actually, most MacAdmins will enable SSH on a computer. It's their bread and butter. That's the way they respond to an issue. If they don't have SSH, they're kind of locked out of the machine. With SNMP, if you send an initial library that extends the SNMP tree, you can actually disable SSH. And you're still getting all that juicy information from an SNMP query. So the security issues, yes, I could send a script that formats the hard drive. But if I put a library script, pre-approved, pre-tested, bulletproof, and then I disable SSH access, it's a more secure deployment than one where I leave SSH enabled so I can do more support after the fact.
But is there any authentication going on?
When you do the query, it's just the community name, unless you're using version 3. Version 3 would require you to have a username and a password.
But SSH does have authentication, where SNMP does not with version 2 and below, you're saying.
Yeah, but if you have SSH access with credentials, and you're telling me you're worried about malicious use, if I have SSH with credentials, I can reformat your drive. The day you give SSH access to someone, you're giving them the keys. They can drive. They can put their hands on the steering wheel, and they're in charge.
But you're talking about giving SNMP access to everyone with no credentials.
They're still inbound.
I think there's when Manuel extends the SNMP, it's not the script that sends over the unencrypted protocol to the client. It's just the script that already sits on the client that has been triggered, and the result is sent back over.
But anyone can trigger it and get that result.
Right.
Yeah. Now,
And that's the issue that I'm
yeah. Well,
Then you control the security inside the script.
my answer would be: do you care if somebody knows the model of your hard drive? If you do, you need v3. You need to put SNMP v3. If your SNMP query returns sensitive information, then you have to look at SNMP v3, where you can have password and login credentials like SSH. Yes?
So, can the SNMP agent or what require
You set that up, so you could disable the read-only and the read-write communities and just have SNMP v3. So any attempt to use another protocol will fail.
Does SNMP route across VLANs, or do you have to manually route it?
It's a port, so as an SNMP query goes over a port. I'm guessing if you route that port, or if you allow that port through, you'll have no problems. If your firewall blocks that port, it's 2 ports. It's a 161 and 162. One of them is for queries, one of them is for traps. If you allow that traffic, then you'll be able to skip subnets.
So even on an MPLS network for WAN purposes, you could route that.
I'd have to check. Depending on your topology, you might want to have a collector set up. So there's a way to set up monitoring where if you have different locations, you have an engine that queries all locally the data, and then just shoots up the compiled information. Yes, and you can do that as a way to get around that. What I've done is I've had clients that had different subnets. I just had a server with multiple NICs, so I had a Dell with 4 network ports, and one was on each NIC, and I was just talking locally with all of them. All right.